Good morning. This is Ray Johnson, COO of BDI, Dodd Institute, and I want to welcome you to Max Talks with the Technology Association of Georgia. We're pleased and grateful that you're here to join us today to have a discussion around how diversity and inclusion drives innovation in the tech sector, specifically in Metro Atlanta. We've come together, and I'm pleased that we are joined by Larry Williams, the president and CEO of the Technology Association of Georgia, TAG, and Hiran Chukla from Ernst & Young, who's a leader of the Neurodiverse Center of Excellence for Ernst & Young. And then we'll do an introduction for both in just a minute. But this is a unique time for us. We believe actually the perfect time for us to be having this conversation about diversity and inclusion, but we want to expand that conversation. So we certainly want to challenge everyone to think about diversity and inclusion beyond, I believe, what most organizations think in terms of what that means. And then how that impacts our ability to serve the tech community and where the opportunities are. And I think we've got a couple of challenges around how we enable, empower, and then employ individuals with all abilities. And also, working with employers. So as we move forward, just to give you a sense of the agenda, and as we begin, I also just want to be remiss if I didn't give a special thanks to our anchor sponsors: WorkSource Georgia, the state, Atlanta Career Rise, Goodwill, Metro Chamber, and First Step Staffing. So we are grateful from a Max standpoint for your support, continued support, as we continue to move forward and make progress with workforce development and economic development in Metro Atlanta and the state. As we look at today's agenda and panel discussion, this is truly going to be a discussion around how diversity and inclusion can drive innovation in technology and the need for really focusing on inclusion. As we're in a very interesting labor market, and we've seen growth. We've seen growth trends in technology long before the pandemic hit. But I would suggest that through the pandemic and as a result of the pandemic, the technology innovation and growth within the job sectors across AI and cybersecurity, and we think about work from home and what we have to do to change the way in which we all work, in which employers embrace this new work environment, as a result of the pandemic, have really accelerated many of those initiatives. And so when we look at our labor force today and the challenges we have, how do we enable a broader workforce with differing abilities in the tech space to help us really realize the opportunities and changes that can take place. So we're going to have that discussion. And today we're going to actually break it down into 3 segments. So first, after our introductions for Hiran and Larry, we are going to talk about just on a baseline understanding of what diversity and inclusion really means, or what we believe it means in the workplace and in today's environment. And then have a discussion about what the market and employment opportunities or outlook are for the tech sector, specifically in Metro Atlanta. And then we'll wrap up with some challenges, I believe, or kind of takeaways for our audience. So as we look at our workforce and our economic development peers, what can we do to help build and drive inclusion throughout our city and state, and really become a city of inclusiveness for individuals with all abilities. So with that, I'm going to first want to do an introduction to Larry Williams, the president and CEO of the Technology Association. Larry serves as the president and CEO of the Atlanta Technology Association of Georgia, and he also is president of the National Technology Security Coalition, or NTSC. TAG created the NTSC as the nation's preeminent cybersecurity policy advocacy voice for chief information security officers. Now, Larry came to TAG in 2016 with more than 25 years of experience in economic development. He was president and CEO of the Beacon Council in Miami-Dade County. prior to that, was Vice President of Technology Development at the Metro Atlanta Chamber and worked 9 years at the Washington State Department of Commerce. So as we introduce Larry, and Larry, I'm grateful that you're here. I want to share a video that
Delighted to be here.
Larry shared with us at their recent Converge conference around diversity and inclusion.
It was interesting in talking to the kids today. The first question asked you, as well as the last question, had to do with race, with color. Did that work for you or against you in the early years?
I suspect it worked both against me and for me. I think in some cases, people may have had lower expectations of me because I was black and because of their own prejudices. And in other cases, people, whether I performed up to standards or not, were going to put me down because I was black. So I suspect it both helped me and hurt me. It was an advantage and a disadvantage.
I also feel especially proud to be standing here where some years ago Jackie Robinson and Roy Campanella proved the way and made it possible for Frank and me and for other blacks hopeful in baseball. They proved to the world that a man's ability is limited only by his lack of opportunity.
And I thought, my God, this man is thinking that we're not human beings. And I made up my mind that I could not afford the luxury of just being an actress, and that I would use my career as my platform.
I try to look at this event through the lens of the evolution in this country, of the idea who in our country are the people who have constitutional rights and constitutional responsibilities, and the evolution of the expansion of that.
I used a plain geometry book in 1951 that had been used by a white student in 1935. But we, Maynard, and so many of us, did not let that deter us from going to college, going to law school, and coming back home to participate in the leadership and to bring change to our hometown.
So the way I look at it, if our youth don't win,
I apologize. I don't know if the video came through.
At the very end, it was, so, yeah.
I thought I had that sharing, Larry. I apologize. But with that, Larry, always technical difficulties, user error. But can you provide the organization, the audience, an overview of TAG and the initiatives that TAG has within Metro Atlanta, et cetera?
Sure, by all means. And hopefully the sound came through to everyone, and it's a very powerful video about our commitment to social justice and equity, and really framing up Georgia's position in social justice and equity, the long history that we've had in being part of the solution and part of the fight, quite frankly. And I know that we'll be circling back on those topics move forward and throughout this discussion. So Ray, Hiram, thank y'all for taking time. This is delighted to be a part of this discussion. It's extremely important to us as a community and to TAG itself. At TAG, we're a professional association of technologists and people that are very interested in technology and innovation. We've been serving the community here in Georgia for about 22 years. And I think one of the great things that we've done is really about creating one of the most connected technology and innovation ecosystems. We're 30,000 members strong. We represent over 1,000 companies, corporate companies, a lot of individual members. And we work to really connect that community in a way that makes it a powerful group to be able to share ideas, to identify common problems, develop solutions for those problems, develop peer-to-peer networks, and really, again, be connected and really connected to all the aspects of what are the things that drive innovation. So it's large companies, it's small companies, it's startup community, it's our entrepreneurs, it's the capital, it's public sector, it's our academia, as well as other nonprofits that really go and create this very, very rich and robust ecosystem that we have in Georgia. And so we're super excited to be a part of that. The other thing we get to do is really talk about our strengths and how do we help promote our members, giving them a competitive advantage in the marketplace, but also helping them, helping people know that Georgia really is one of the leading, not only one of the leading states for technology, but a global hub for innovation. Happening here in cybersecurity. We own transactions and fintech, data science and analytics. All of these things are driven in very, very important ways through the companies that we represent. All very important signature companies, but then the companies that are around them. We spend a lot of time lobbying for state policies to make sure we have a great state for doing business, for growing technology companies, but also that we are, advocating for things like social justice and equity, as well as education and access. So we do that, but at the federal level, through our cybersecurity initiative, as well as at the state level. The other very important part that really dovetails in this conversation is about the workforce and the workforce of the future. And a lot of it with the TAG Education Collaborative and how do we develop tomorrow's workforce today? There's a huge demand for workforce today at all different aspects of people's careers, talents, and technical capabilities. And so whether it be entry level all the way up to highly skilled and highly experienced people, all the way up to different types of things that might be more physically oriented, making sure that we have the cable, the infrastructure, the broadband, and the data centers, and that they're constructed and they're running well as people that are really running data science or cybersecurity experts. Spectrum is broad and deep, and it's an exciting time to be in Georgia. The point of the video was really building on a social justice and equity task force that we built. And really that focuses in, and I'll be repeating these probably a couple times throughout, but really focusing on, from our perspective at TAG, that to create an environment of social justice and equity, there are 5 areas that we're doing. And the first one is about access. People have an equitable access to different resources and different advantages, whether it be for capital or for jobs or promotions throughout their career. There's great access. That there's equity. We look at these things from an equitable point of view so that people do have the opportunity to take advantage of these initiatives. We look at it from diversity. Diversity means a lot of things. It's ethnicity, it's gender, it's the capabilities that people have and the unique perspectives that they can bring. And then participation. It's not just enough to let them in. We've got to make sure that we're proactive about people who have the ability to participate, that we make sure that people are welcome and feel comfortable presenting their ideas and participation. The 5th one is really the platform. This is platform, or maybe we say it's overarching, and that is that this is about basic human rights. This is everyone's human right to have access, equity, diversity, and great prosperity that we're experiencing. And that's how we frame this conversation up as a technology. So Ray, I don't know if I gave you more than you wanted on that one, but
no, that's
that will frame
terrific.
it up.
No, that's terrific. And I apologize again for my lack of ability to display the video when I thought it was. But thank you, Larry. I appreciate it very much. Next, I'd like to introduce Hiren Shukla. And Hiren is, his experience spans more than 20 years across the fields of accounting, strategy, automation, innovation, and information technology. He currently leads the internal automation and innovation at Ernst & Young, US, and is the founder of the Neurodiverse Centers of Excellence at Ernst & Young in the United States. Hiren helps unlock human potential to drive innovation across emerging technology, blockchain, AI, cybersecurity, and analytics. Hiren has helped to lead the EY Global Intelligent Automation Hub, Automation Central, which has built more than 2,000 digital assets for the global organization, helping drive innovation across emerging technology and building the foundation for harnessing data for machine learning and predictive analytics. He is the strategic link at EY responsible for converting the neurodiversity inclusiveness effort into commercial application for exceptional client service and tangible ROI. His efforts allow EY to use US to bring this innovation model to its largest clients and rapidly open additional neurodiverse centers of excellence across their global footprint. Hiren, we appreciate that you can be here with us today to expand our conversation around diversity and inclusion. And at the risk of not being able to display videos correctly again, but we will get the videos out to everyone. So I think it's important that at the end, we want to share that information with this audience. So we'll make sure, Larry and Hiren, that we get the appropriate videos out, at the risk of this technical user not being able to execute effectively. But Hiren, I'd like to just turn over to you just to introduce yourself and, specifically the Center of Excellence and the work that you're, doing to support those on the spectrum, but really just neurodiverse, and the program is just exceptional.
Thank you so much, Ray. I appreciate it. I'm honored to be here with you and Larry. Ray, as you said, my name is Hiren Shukla. I've been with EY for 25 years, but the last 7 years sitting under our innovation and transformation function. When we think about, all of the official things that are in my bio, I think it comes down to one thing. Diverse teams produce incredible results. And 7 years ago, the inflection point in my own career was as we're thinking about organizations of the future, agile, resilient, most creative, and the ability through the use of data and emerging technology to not only solve the most complex problems of today, but to really think about how do you see around the corner to what's coming. And this was very interesting that we thought about this from a standpoint of how do we disrupt ourselves before we're disrupted? Public or private, any organization, any industry, any sector, any country in the world, subject to not only environmental forces and climate change, but geopolitical forces, shifting of workforce. And we started thinking about this rapid deployment of artificial intelligence and what that application would look like when you wrap it around data science. And this brought us back to, where is this workforce going to come from? Where are we going to find that organizational ability and muscle? And this is where I was first introduced to the term neurodiversity. So let me just take a moment, Ray, and define that for our audience today. Neurodiversity is like biodiversity. It represents the realm of cognitive differences that exist in the world. This is invisible, right? We can't see this. What I was enlightened to 7 years ago was that 80% of the world's population today is neurotypical. So folks like myself, as we grow up, we converge in our social style, our thinking style, our communication style. About 20% of the world's population, this was mind-blowing to me, 20% of the world's population is neurodivergent. And what does this mean? We often think about this in terms of diagnoses: dyslexia, dyspraxia, ADHD, Asperger's, autism. 20% of the world's population has an inherent hardwired cognitive difference, which means they don't converge. There is a divergent, hence the term neurodivergent. There is a divergence in how they think, approach, digest the world, sometimes a little bit, sometimes a lot. And I don't have any personal connection to this community, but as we were thinking 7 years ago, where is this agile, resilient, creative, complex problem-solving workforce going to come from? It was as if the clouds parted and a ray of sunlight came down right down on my head, and there were angels in the background, because it was an epiphany. How is it possible that 20% of the world's population that has an invisible but inherent cognitive difference is at 85% plus unemployment or underemployment? But the last point that really hooked me as a business leader, about 35% of that population, this neurodivergent population, we are now talking in the hundreds of millions of people around the world. About 35% have extremely high creativity, complex problem solving, systems thinking, and 3D thinking ability, spontaneity, entrepreneurship, and last but not least, extremely high data and technology acumen, aptitude, and interest. And again, Ray and I don't have any personal connection, but I'm listening to one of my colleagues who is a parent of an individual. Her son is neurodivergent. And as I'm listening to this and thinking, wait a minute, how is it that we've always thought about this population from a disabilities and a deficit-based perspective? But yet, as Larry was talking about, the innovation that we need, the ability to think differently so that we're most creative and that are going to help us solve the most challenging problems, that innovation capacity is in, and I'll give you 3 examples, Ray. We've hired an Uber driver, a pizza delivery person, and a janitor. These are all honorable jobs with dignity and that are hardworking. Except the pizza delivery person, 3 weeks after stopping delivering pizzas, is not only building machine learning algorithms, he's correcting machine learning algorithms that our artificial intelligence lab was trying to finalize. He has a data science background. He had sent out over 500 of his resumes. We were his first job offer. And we pause for a moment and think, is this a one-hit wonder? Have we just like stumbled into something that is an anomaly? Today, and Ray, as we get into it, we'll talk about the global collaborative opportunity that exists from a business standpoint. And again, I'm not sitting with EY's talent or HR department. I'm not part of diversity, equity, and inclusion. I'm part of driving innovation and transformation. And so for me, thinking about building assets, products, solutions, process optimization through the use of machine learning, that we build and apply analytic solutions into areas, as Larry mentioned, like cybersecurity. We cannot find enough professionals today in the cyberspace. you think, how is this possible? And all of this comes together, and I'll end on this note, Ray. Organizations that not only will survive in the future, but will thrive are those that create value, not just for shareholders, but for stakeholders. And this is how you drive a galvanized workforce around a sense of belonging and purpose. So really excited, Ray, to talk with you and Larry today and engage others in this conversation.
Thank you, Heron. And I couldn't agree more. And when we think about it, too often folks are looked at their disability versus their ability. And it's truly about how do we just provide an environment where people can thrive based on their abilities. And I think we have some challenges, and as we look at from a workforce development standpoint, workforce investment, and economic development, we've got some challenges because we've got to create an environment where people like that Uber driver have an opportunity to demonstrate their ability and get employed, which means that, and I think we've seen that in EY, the change in your approach to hiring and thinking about people's abilities. So we're gonna definitely want to dive into that a lot more. Question I have for you, I do have your slide from the Center of Excellence. Would you like to just talk about that just for a second?
That would be fantastic, Ray, because I'm sure folks are saying, this is great. And where is the maturity of this model today?
Right.
What does that look like? I'll give you a moment, Larry, to get that, Ray, to get that up and going.
There we go.
Okay. All right, really quick. And excitingly, there's some updates on this slide, which I'll give you all real time. So this is a single page placemat. So there's a lot going on here, but let me frame a couple of things for the audience. We think about neurodiversity as a dimension of high performance teams, which means we're driving transformation. This is not a charitable, philanthropic, or corporate social responsibility initiative. This is driving outcomes. And we affectionately call the application of our team the Abcds of Innovation. And for us, those Abcds are artificial intelligence and automation, blockchain, cyber, cloud, and now crypto. And the D is for all things data, data science, analytics, visualization, data engineering. And we say this because we've done a few things. One, we've mapped the neurodivergent population to key skills and areas that the World Economic Forum is saying these are future focused skills. That's on the upper left-hand side. Those are 4 of the 10 skills that we say these are resident and available in the neurodivergent community. Lastly, we've taken our own medicine here. And so Ray, as EY and as a number of our clients, and they allow me to use their names, Procter & Gamble, Wells Fargo, Dow Chemical, ServiceNow, as a workflow technology company that most of us know. These organizations, as Larry was saying so properly, these are the ones that are looking for talent. They're recognizing talent exists in multiple places. EY's 6-year journey is now at 300 personnel. So there's a bit of a change than what's on this slide that I sent over. We're live in 5 countries around the world: the US, Canada, India, Spain, and Poland. UK will launch in 3 months, Australia in 6, Costa Rica in 9. We're going to double and triple down on an available workforce. And frankly, we're now taking a number of our clients and saying, join us on this journey. We will not only teach you how to do this, we think we can innovate together. And this is where we think the power, Larry used a beautiful word, ecosystems. Building and orchestrating ecosystems to drive the highest value is really what we think the future of organization value is all about. And I'll, last but not least, bring you to 2 points on here. One, we formed a global employer roundtable with our friends at SAP, Microsoft, JP Morgan Chase. There's about 38 other organizations that are involved in it. Open source sharing of information. We have a playbook that's on the Disability In website that the University of Washington put together for us. I'll try to grab that link and put it into the chat. But the last thing I'll say, as our audience is listening to this, I would love to bring your attention to these 4 yellow boxes at the bottom of this slide. I want you to think about this as an intersection, the intersection of digital transformation, strategic workforce, results-driven diversity and inclusion. As Larry and I both know, and Ray, I think as you say, diversity and inclusion is not a checklist. If you do it right, you activate equity and belonging. That puts your organization and your workforce into another gear, almost turbocharges you. And then last but not least, if you look at that last yellow box in the last part of this intersection, the broader ESG agenda. The S is purposely in bigger font down there because this is how you build social value, economic prosperity, equity, and how organizations galvanize, again, their communities. And so we really think that there is an amazing opportunity here to collaborate. We're excited for Atlanta and the greater Atlanta area as we think about TAG and you all and our friends at Emory and a number of other great organizations and the business community that exist. Ray, we think there's an amazing opportunity.
Yeah, I would agree wholeheartedly. And I think that the challenge that we've had, and want to look at, and we'll talk more about this, but how we bring this down, all the great work that you're doing globally, how do we bring it to Metro Atlanta and then replicate that throughout Georgia in a collaborative effort? Because I think there's been a lot of disparate work in Metro Atlanta, particularly around the neurodiverse and specifically based, the work that I did in the autism community, and how we bring the organizations together, and TAG as a convener of the tech sector for us in Metro Atlanta. It plays a significant role in this effort as we continue to move forward. And I think this is a great segue, and I want to talk more about it because I found in the 2 videos that you sent, the short links, that one thing that struck me was you're looking at aptitude, and we've got, the population that we serve. So the audience, when we think about our kind of max audience in workforce and economic development, those that they're serving are either like us serving the disability community, or others serving the disadvantaged or underserved communities, that where our folks that we're serving may not necessarily have a degree. Right? We know that, I think the last numbers I've seen, roughly 30% of those on the spectrum actually are with a neurodiverse get a college degree or finish college. And of those, I think the percentages are very, very high in terms of having employment for perhaps 6 months, and then they're back in the job market. And as you said, it's 75 to 80% are either underemployed or not employed. But I think a part of our challenges, particularly as we get into the tech space, is folks that we're serving may not have a degree, but have the aptitude. And I know, Larry, we've talked about that because when we talked about the TCSG and some of the challenges. So I do want to explore that more. And I think as we talk through this, I think this is a good time for us just to kind of baseline. I'm going to stop sharing for a moment here and baseline around diversity inclusion. And Larry, I'm just going to defer to you first because you just had your Converge conference around diversity inclusion and had some amazing tech leaders and also head of Department of Labor as part of the conference. And I'd just like your perspective on how organizations are viewing diversity and inclusion, particularly as we look at just the Metro Atlanta area.
Oh, that's great, Ray. And Hiram, what a great presentation. What a great way to frame up what we're doing. So thank you for that. I think the companies that we're really working with do have an idea and a good solid base and what the benefits of having an equitable and inclusive workforce are in an environment that they can. Really, the theme of Converge is really about how inclusion drives innovation. If there are people that need to be convinced that inclusion is important and that it works and that it drives to better innovation, there are ways to get them that type of an education and train them up. But really, Converge, this was about that secret sauce and about really how inclusion does create a better outcome, a better product, a better service, a better work environment that's conducive for all those other things that we just mentioned. And that's what we really, really focused in on. Converge really did a great job in my conversation with Mark Butler, the Commissioner of Labor, was really framing up, the need out there. It's risk of repeating. The demand for a variety of workforce in Georgia and across this nation and globally is as intense today as it's ever been. And I think I've been saying that every year for the last decade or so. But quite frankly, it is more acute today than it has ever been. And so I think one is just the demand, just knowing that there is a real need here that we need to address. There's a demand from the employer point of view. So then we have to really think about how we're going to do it. Now, that's why I really like the way Hiram framed this up, because on one hand, it's all hands on deck. We need everybody and bringing every perspective that they can and getting trained. And this idea of being aptitude based is really, really gaining a lot of traction. So, for example, we think about things that don't necessarily need 4-year degrees, or if people are trying to start a new career, they might have a 4-year degree in something, but they need to get retrained and reskilled in other things. There are ways to accelerate that growth that are both in formal trainings as well as in people that are learning on their own. There's so many, platforms now for people that are self-learners. Coursera, you can go down a list of these platforms that have incredible knowledge that they're willing to share, and people can get degrees, or quite frankly, you can watch the videos and just get the knowledge. And the knowledge is what's so important about it, and then develop the skills on your own. So that's one, but then also our educational institutions are willing to train and upskill people as well in a variety of different areas. A lot of these things don't require 4-year degrees. It's amazing because one of the biggest challenges that we have in overcoming a barrier is getting employers to actually remove 4-year degree required in their job description.
Yes, precisely.
And
it's a
so
mind shift change that has to take place.
It really does, and it's so embedded and systemic. And we have hiring managers that will say, "I don't need a 4-year degree." We'll have folks at different levels, but it's getting that system to switch and to change, and to really think about what this means and what the opportunities are. The others is performance management is what we used to talk about, and now that's shifted to hiring based on aptitude. I'll share another. The Cyber and Information Security Agency of the Department of Homeland Security, because of the demand for cybersecurity professionals, again, at all different aspects and different levels of that job and what it means, they are launching an aptitude-based platform to be able to review, assess talent, and get people with the right aptitudes in, or say, "Hey, you're not quite there. Here's the pathway to get there. You need to develop stronger aptitudes here or there, but here's the pathway. If you're committed to this. This is what you can do to get there." And I think that is so powerful. Mm-hmm. And so when we think about what inclusion means, this is giving people an opportunity, because we talk about workforce, we talk about talent, we're talking about people, and we're talking about people that want to be a part of the workforce. The Uber drivers, those are great examples. They want to be a part of it. They're willing to engage, and we can set up that inclusive environment that drives the innovation.
Thank you, Larry. That's just a great point. And I think there are, you touched on one of the barriers around educational requirements. And as we've talked previously, there are a number of myths and barriers associated with, inclusion, specifically here and on the neurodiverse side and disability segment. And so we talk about it internally, just some of the myths, that individuals with disability or those that are neurodiverse may have a negative impact on productivity, or their accommodations might be expensive. What are some of the things that the other part of it, which I found fascinating too, hearing on the video, was, while many organizations have implemented the diversity programs, and it's this social impact, they know it's the right thing to do, but when you listen to your CEO, she's like, this is an absolute business necessity if we're going to thrive and grow. And so as I think about that, and I think about we talked about the myths, what else have you here, can share and have seen relative to that?
Yeah, Ray, thank you and by the way, I'm going to tease that video a little bit because, we had a segment on CBS 60 Minutes with Anderson Cooper. My wife thought I was joking. This was an Emmy nominated segment. I was at home in front of the TV wearing my tuxedo. This was the closest I was ever going to get to the Emmy. So I had to milk it for everything I could. But I would encourage everybody. It's so eye-opening, Ray and Larry, as we know, to see what actually happens when you allow people, and that phrase, bring your whole self to work. Well, organizations, first of all, have to have a little bit of thick skin. When we say this, we had better mean it, because when we mean it, that means what's happened, Ray, is we've unlocked innovation capacity. Our team members were working on a vulnerability assessment project, a cybersecurity project for a client that had 1,000 assets in the field, and they were all IoT devices. We had to assign a vulnerability rating to each one. It's a very routine, 22-step process. And after doing the first 50 to 60, the team decided on their own, this was our neurodivergent team, that they were going to apply their automation skills, automate 70% of the assessment process because it was very boring. Nobody wants to do this work anyway. And with the time that they saved, they built an analytics platform that visualized the data that we have now sold for multi-millions of dollars to over 21 clients. And we say, this is commercial benefit. This is, the social good is a spillover effect to what we're doing here. What we are finding, though, is, as you, Ray, and Larry, we all talk about aptitude. When you apply this acumen and interest, if you know autistic individuals, for example, when they're interested in something, it's not a little bit, it's a lot.
It's all in.
That's exactly it. And so what's happening is that really difficult new areas, blockchain, NFTs, and crypto. We're getting involved in areas where their ability of lateral thinking is allowing them to go not only, deeper, faster, but they are being much more creative. And we're finding that their ability and agility to absorb, meaning learn and apply. And Larry said something that really resonates with our team, which is many of them are self-taught. They're actually watching videos about something, and then they're putting ideas together. And this is where we say the power of feeling that you have the psychological safety to innovate. Innovation doesn't come because you ask somebody to innovate. It comes because you're inspired to innovate. And so we're finding that they're running a lot faster. They're moving deeper. They're creative. But last but not least, we also realize that it's current organizational processes like current sourcing avenues or the interview process, which is a behavioral-based process. When we pivot to a performance-based process, meaning we're now looking for that aptitude, acumen, and interest, that process is allowing us to screen individuals in versus traditional process that's screening individuals out. And so we're realizing there's small tweaks in organizational protocol today that would open up massive avenues. And for all of us, the neurodivergent community cuts across race, gender, age, sexual orientation. And so we all see a little bit of ourselves from saying, boy, what if I were to unlock my own dormant innovation capacity because I'm now inspired to do so. So we're finding tremendous benefit in ways that we could not have scripted.
Right, right. Yeah, and you're defining full inclusion from my perspective, where we cut across, race, identity, gender, ethnicity, ability. And that's really, as we talk about inclusion and diversity, that really touches it on it all. And so what I'm hearing, as a workforce organization, and we do this now, we work with participants and those that we serve to help train them and we work with employers around some of the obstacles that exist around the interview process and the screening process. But as I think about, two things that we need to really consider and begin to overcome in terms of education and understanding with employers are one around educational background. And I think we've got a gap and we should be looking at entry level, then, all the way up to, most senior. And we just on a call around cybersecurity, and you've got organizations basically recruiting from other organizations to bring experts into theirs. And it doesn't solve the problem, right? The gap's still there. I'm just shifting from one spot to another. So, understanding how we work and change that mindset around what are the requirements to be successful in employment, and then the whole process of screening and interviewing, and because we know that particularly on the spectrum, if I bring someone that's on the spectrum into a standardized interview process, the likelihood of success is not very great because it's unless with exceptional coaching, et cetera. So I think those are two things that we need to, we talk more about too, is from an employer standpoint, but we really touched on just the inclusiveness and really what that's about and some of the challenges. What, as we think about the market and opportunity, and specifically, as I'm starting to think about just the discussion we're having, how do we take it down to the Atlanta marketplace? And where are our, what's the job market outlook within Metro Atlanta, particularly in the tech sector? And Larry, I just sort of maybe defer to you for just a overview based on your work with TAG and employers throughout Metro Atlanta. What are you hearing from employers? And where do we see the growth opportunities within our segment? Because we're trying to be a technology hub, and there are key areas that I think there are opportunities for us as workforce, in the workforce development space to focus on and help develop talent that exists out there.
Yeah, Ray, there's tens of thousands of jobs out there in the sector that are in demand and that will continue. And I think Hiring did a great job of identifying some of the megatrends. And I call them megatrends because these are really good. Think about, artificial intelligence, automation, blockchain, cyber, data. Those are all megatrends that are
right.
I'm going to focus in on the automation side and what's driving that. A lot of people think it's about the displacement and the saving of payroll. No, it is the absence of people to be able to fill these jobs that is really fueling the need for automation. People can't find people. You got to figure out other ways to get things done. And so that's what's fueling all of this, the artificial intelligence. And then, you really got to connect that with data. It's the data science, it's the data analytics that drives. So, but there still have to be people that can understand and make this work. So whenever we think about the demand for the people that can come from a variety of different areas, with a lot of different backgrounds, a lot of different skills and abilities, that's what they need to be focused in on. So what are the things that, who's going to think about the new processes? Who's going to take this artificial intelligence and actually make it something that's operable, something that you can take action on, something that will actually, produce the outcome, service that we need. And that is that connection with data as well. I think I just got to add another layer to this, because these mega trends aren't meant to be industry-based, but a lot of times we don't include them, or we don't include the biosciences and medical fields in a lot of ways. But those areas need the same things and the same level of detail in being able to provide that analysis and that in depth, and talking about processing large chunks of data, everything from genetics that goes into cancer research and everything else. This is all big processes that can engage a lot of people that really do, that people that are super intense, people that are all in, as y'all were just talking about, and that can really just, dig into these different areas. They're all needed, and they're all needed in Atlanta. These things, we're one, people don't recognize this a lot, or they don't realize it till you look up and see. We're one of the top 3 centers of global health.
Right.
Definitely in the country.
Yeah.
And top 10 in the world. I mean, it is, New York, or probably Washington, I guess, New York, Seattle, and in Atlanta. A lot of that's driven by the CDC, Emory, and other things.
Yeah.
So this is a key part of our technology environment and what needs to be looked at. Those jobs are extremely, extremely important for us. But all of these areas and looking for the solutions are in demand across the board at every company that I'm talking to.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right.
Without exception.
They touch every organization. So whether it's a financial institution, a healthcare institution, insurance, et cetera.
Retail, supply chain.
Everyone's dealing with cybersecurity, right?
Everybody's dealing with it. It touches everything.
And we talk about
touches everything.
Yeah, and we talk about the impact of the pandemic. It accelerated healthcare IT.
Yeah, telemedicine,
telehealth, telemedicine. Became a necessity.
And it's a great example of some of the. So a lot of that is based on analysis, because what can happen with telemedicine, you don't have to go into the doctor, but it's accelerated the ability to provide the analysis that goes into it and the background work that then gets fed back to the patient and with the doctor, and sort of creates that triangle. So it's extremely important. And I think it's an extremely important point to make, that what the pandemic really revealed, or maybe threw a little water on the dust cloud, it wasn't about technology. The technology was there, the abilities were there.
Right.
Policy was in the way. In this case, public policy. What we found in some companies, corporate policy was in the way. We saw that in the government sector. I talked to a state CIO, different state, but he said all of a sudden the pandemic, as it hit, the legislature, the executives were coming up in the government and saying, "Oh, all those things you've been talking about, go now, get them. We want them done now." And he's like, "Well, I can't do them overnight," but they're like, go. And so these are extremely important things that the abilities were there. It was the policies, and now the policies are lining up, and these gates are being opened up, is my main point. So you get back to telemedicine, get back to the analytics, you get back with the public sector, other things, education, how we're educating, how we're gaining knowledge, how we're sharing knowledge. All of these gates are open, and I think it's a robust and exciting time for all of us here.
It really is. Harold, I'm going to come to you in a second, but Larry, I first want to ask you, can you speak to some of the initiatives, from a TAG perspective, just initiatives and partnerships, whether at the state level and also local level with businesses, to address, how we create an environment of inclusion that drives innovation locally, and then what skill sets, is kind of guidance for the audience. What skill sets should we be focused on in terms of developing for those that we serve?
Yeah, I think that's great. I mean, we're doing several things that, the intersection. So the initiatives that we do, we keep inclusion at the forefront of the mind because they cut across everything. We don't, you can't have, we're going to do this program for inclusion. It's got to be, woven into our fabric and make sure they work. So, for example, we're doing a particular program right now with Technical College System of Georgia on rural workforce development. This idea that you don't always have to be in the workforce. Great prosperity being that we're seeing happen in Atlanta and the metro area. People can be sitting elsewhere, as we've proven in the pandemic. Exponentially can be engaged. That also applies to people of whether it be ethnic, gender, or based on capabilities, how they can really engage into the workforce and how they can engage. So that's one area. We're working on entrepreneurism with the city of Atlanta. So there's a multitude of different things. We're working with our private sector on the different trainings that need to be offered. So, then you start getting into a little bit of the alphabet soup, Ray, and hiring that of. It's everything from C+ to, more industry focused. It's, Python, it's people AWS certified, it's Microsoft and Azure certified, Google certified. Then we get into the cybersecurity areas and different certification and levels of certification there. Those are all very much in high demand. Again, I can't think of a company or an industry that's not looking for these things.
Right.
So all of these are here, all of these opportunities are there. And so what the companies are willing to do, they're willing to invest in this. And so what we're seeing is a shift of sort of going back to yesteryear in a way. So, I'm sorry, let me back up and go. So how do we get these people? There are, again, not I said not everything needs a 4-year degree. 4-year degrees are still popular and high demand, and we need those.
And they will be.
Yeah, they're still big. Not dissing them in any way, but we also need those 2 years, and we need to upskill people quicker. So the Technical College System of Georgia does an incredible job for us across the state. Thousands and thousands of training programs, extremely affordable that can get in. The other part is private sector training, still a very relevant part. And what's really coming back is a lot more on-the-job training. And so this whole idea of apprenticeships are coming back. Been very, they were very much a part of our society yesteryear, decades ago. Still very popular in Europe, still great examples of apprenticeships and how they work. This is continuing to be how we're going to get people involved in the workforce, get them up to speed and quicker. And we're seeing a lot of these companies embracing these types of things because they're really looking at, we'll do whatever it takes. We got to do it.
Yeah, it's I guess it's come down to it's not really an option at this point if the organizations are going to grow and thrive.
Yeah, it's not a choice.
Right. It's a matter of survival for some, right?
Yeah. Or staying in the forefront of innovation. That's
Right.
what everybody needs to do.
Right.
And whoever gets it right is going to have a competitive advantage.
Right. And Heron, what as you're building out now, so you're leveraging your experiences, and I think you shared that you're now sharing your work with other organizations. I want to bring it back to Metro Atlanta and Georgia. What initiatives do you have here, and how can our peers in workforce economic development be engaged and learn from the work that you're doing and partner as well?
Yeah, thanks so much, Ray. A couple of things, and I'm using these examples hopefully to poke some of the competitive nerve that we, because I think the great state of Georgia and I think Atlanta is a powerhouse of a community. When we look at what we did with some community partners in Frankfort, Kentucky, with our friends at a company called Interapt. We're engaging in their Black and Brown communities, and we're investing, as Larry said, in the apprenticeship model. And we're going to two-year colleges, and we're saying, you've got a number of folks, even our four-year universities, that have dropped out. What if we were to invest in them from a job placement perspective? And Larry said it beautifully. What if we learned on the job? What would this look like while providing some stipend? We know that government agencies, so when we went into Boston, Massachusetts, the vocational rehab agencies and the workforce commissions, we're spending taxpayer dollars here, but what's the efficacy of those dollars? Where is this going towards? We think the public-private relationship is really what's going to drive that efficacy up to a new level. And so we take what we've seen from a neurodiversity perspective and we expand it from a universal design. And we say, four-year college degrees, as Larry said, yes, they're important. They'll always be important. But I think we're leaving off the table a number of opportunities and places where, frankly, we need to go. And by we, this is where we think about our friends and, at Procter & Gamble or EY or at Wells Fargo. We say, we have the ability and the need to invest in these. We live in these communities. These are our customers and they're our employees. If we don't invest in them, frankly, we're going to miss out at the end of this. Is no longer a charitable effort, right? You're not doing something just good for somebody else. You're doing it because it's good for you. And so, Ray, I think when I think about Atlanta, I think partnering up, by the way, Larry, you may not know, but you're already in our speed dial. So you and Ray are, we think about Emory and you guys, and we say, wow, imagine how we can amplify the value by bringing this disparate, unique knowledge to others, as we've now created pathways to say, you can take part, but keep in mind, as a commercial effort, there's investment, there's commitment, there's cost, there's bandwidth. Everything has a payoff respective to the investment you make into it, right? So we say, boy, and I should end on this note. We at EY, as well as some of our corporate partners at Microsoft and JP Morgan Chase, over a 6-year period, data science, artificial intelligence, automation, blockchain, cybersecurity capabilities at 92% retention. Again, 92% retention that's still active today. This is unheard of in the Great Resignation, right? We say, boy, think about the community that you build when you invest in them. And so we think in Atlanta, this is how we want to fire up all the engines. And frankly, we'll need all hands on deck, because I think it's going to take all of us to do it.
Now, Hiram, I just got to jump in and just one, I want to, you have brought up several times on this call that this isn't charity. This goes beyond, this is beyond charity. And I think that really helps frame up the challenge and the opportunity that's both of those that are in front of them. But you did, you mentioned something in your example, and I think it's very important, that there is an ecosystem out here. And some of it does involve more things that might be seen as charitable, because they're things that are important. Someone who's trying to work and feed their family can't take an unpaid internship to learn. They've got to be able to have that revenue and displace that. And I think that's extremely important for us to do. And somebody who's just getting by doesn't have a choice. And that's an area where we can all work together, and that the broader services that are available to us, government, NGOs across Georgia and across the country, are really filling in. And I do have to reflect on our work with STEM education and STEM, STEAM, really making sure that people understand the pathways to get the education that they need to be prepared for these jobs. It's really important. And it goes back to this other aspect as well, and something that I believe in wholeheartedly, is a hungry child can't learn. And we have to be able to make sure that we understand that what you say, we don't want to leave anything on the table where we have an opportunity for a smart, bright person, and that we can develop them. It's extremely important, but we ought to make sure that they have, they got to have a surroundings, they got to have a foundation for success. And I think that there's so many things, there are so many gaps that do exist today, And that's something that we can focus on all around. And I'm not saying this is one person's problem or one organization's problem or one group's problem. A lot of us, and the more that we come together, we have an understanding of what we're trying to do and to recognize, the multidimensional complexity of what we're trying to deal with, the more that we can actually, put some things in place to deal with it. So just really wanted to compliment you for addressing that side of the equation.
No, excellent. I mean, it takes a village.
Yeah, no doubt.
Right. And that's where you talk about the city of inclusion. And Larry, you touched on a really important point, and I'm glad you brought it up from the work that you were doing with STEM, and in STEM, in STEAM. And, I've always been, and we know this, but have firmly believed we need to start with transition. And when I've talked to parents of and caregivers of children on the spectrum, I've always told them you can't start early enough. Identify their interests, their abilities, help nurture those. But we really need to be working with, we look at it in terms of, really starting at 14, 15 years of age to help, begin to understand and develop and nurture those abilities so that they are prepared as we then age out of the school system and now we're faced with employment. But it is going to take that holistic approach. So I appreciate sharing that. And then, the work that is being done through Tag Ed to work in the, K through 12, but, specifically STEM and STEAM. So thank you for sharing that as well. Did have a question. Are we recording this great webinar? Yes. And we will ensure that everyone gets this along with the videos that we had intended to share. As we approach, it's about 12:40 now. We've got about 20 minutes, and I do want to open up for Q&A. But before we do that, Karen and Larry, what I would ask is, can you, just from a takeaway standpoint, as we think about our audience today, what are what can you instill 3 takeaways or challenges for them from a workforce economic development standpoint? Larry, when we talked the other day, you talked about the elevator pitch. But for both of you, as we leave this, I think there are actions that we all need to take if we're going to realize the ability to serve so many, but also change, have a real impact on our community. So a lot said there, but, Karen, I'm going to start with you first and just ask you, your thoughts.
Yeah, thanks, Ray. I'm going to go back to something Larry and I keep talking about. One, I think is really important of framing this discussion that has traditionally been in a nice to do, charitable, let's include others, to the value that is existing here and matching that, frankly, to the need organizations have. So I think that is the first step in any elevator pitches. Hey, we're not asking anybody for a handout here. That's number one. I think 2, we're talking about proven models. So our own journey at EY now, 7 years into this, 5 countries around the world, we're doubling and tripling. We see a workforce of 10,000 in the next 3 to 5 years around the world. Why? Because we say this is what's going to help drive the future. So I think 2, from a business leader discussion, this is not theoretical or white paper anymore. These are already proven. And I think the third thing is challenging status quo, like organizational processes or protocol. For example, the interview process. Mm-hmm. That in and of itself is probably the biggest deterrent to allowing non-traditional workforce. And as Larry pointed out, if your AI algorithm is searching for a 4-year degree, every resume that comes in that does not have that 4-year degree or doesn't match exactly the school will get kicked out, right? So I think challenging status quo is number 3.
Terrific, thank you. And Larry, your thoughts?
I just want to pick up on that AI. One thing that technology can also bring on some some challenges as well. It's not only weeding out resumes. We've got to work on our AI capabilities to make sure that there isn't built-in inherent bias. AI is built by humans. Humans have, very capable of bias, and we need to make sure that those machines and those operations aren't incorporating that. And that's a matter of challenging ourselves and making sure that we're not basing things on current examples. But as far as what goes on, I think it's a very practical point of view that we have to look broad. We have to look at the people that want to be a part of this amazing workforce, that want to develop their careers, and that we're looking at multiple ways. We recognized a long time ago in the workplace that people with different perspectives bring different opportunities. And so those, I think, in the context might consider more subtleties, think about a Myers-Briggs or something like this. But this is just broadening up the opportunities for us to get more people included in this workforce and how that we can do it. And I think it's well said, with tweaks in the way that we engage people, the way that we include them, the way that we make sure that we're communicating with them and allowing them to communicate are all basic things. But we also have to deliver these programs, on the job training, cognitive learning, how people receive information, how they process it is just all that more important. But we have all the, I'll go back to the other example that I gave, the technology and the capabilities are there. It's a matter of us employing them and distributing them in a correct way and continuing to develop those opportunities. I think there's a lot of great opportunities for us to continue this. Great work.
Thank you. Okay, well, we're at about 15 minutes left, so I want to be conscious of providing folks an opportunity to ask questions. So we do have a question. What are the requirements and expectations from a corporate employer perspective for apprenticeship training programs to meet in order to provide paid on-the-job training to apprentices? What also would be requirements to hire apprentices after graduation?
I actually typed a response into the answer. I think it really depends on the program as well as the companies. There's a multitude. Heather Maxfield, who's on the call, can help dive into some more of the specifics offline. I'll put her email address into the answer on the Q&A side. I think they put the question in the chat side as well as the Q&A side. If you look on the Q&A side, you'll see an answer. And Heather, who's listening in, can help direct us some more of the specifics about to help that. I believe Odie asked that question.
Yes, Odie did.
So yeah, so we can follow up with you.
Terrific. I just saw that. So thank you.
Uh-huh.
And I think that it's a great opportunity from a apprenticeship, internship. And one of the things that we're working on is as we look at programs, and we're looking at a 20-week Cisco certification training program. That 20 weeks is quite a bit of time for folks to go through training without any, even if it's free training, they still need, the opportunity to earn something to a livable wage. And so we're looking at how we leverage our social enterprises that we manage and operate to help employ while also folks are going through the training. And there's a bit of a balance there. But I think that is a challenge that we are all going to have as we begin to ask folks to take on this, whether it's an 8-week program, a 20-week program or longer, the ability to still continue to earn and provide for themselves and or their families. And I think that's a big challenge. So I do want to, I'm just trying to check to see if we have any other questions. So I want to want to open up to the audience to see if we've got any questions for Larry or Heron. So I have something in the chat here. It says, I'm new to IT with a women minority-owned digital services firm. CIOs are very busy and don't answer their phones and emails. Should I be speaking with HR instead?
So I'll jump in first. It's interesting. I think that's from Penelope. I see that. That's, Penelope, this is what an interesting dichotomy, right? The people that need the help the most are the busiest that answer the phone.
Right.
But a couple of things, and then Larry, I'll pause if you want to jump in. But partly what we'd love to do, Penelope, at EY, is we realize we are a funnel to organizations. How do we bring minority-owned businesses in EY's own funnel to the CIOs that we are connecting with? So at Wells Fargo, for example, our buyer was the CIO for what we did there. And so we say, wow, they're now talking to us about, as we want to bring them, talent strategies. And part of this is working directly with minority-owned business. So one of the selfish things, Penelope, I would say is we would love to talk to you from EY because we'd like to include you as part of our supply chain as we go into things. So that's what my point would be. I think other large organizations would benefit in them because they get access and they think about these massive projects that CIOs are thinking around transformation. But Larry, I'll pause and see if you have any thoughts here.
I'll mention the other thing for EY, and that is your entrepreneurship programs that you have for small business, especially for Black and brown people. I know one of our board members has been very, very connected with that. And a lot of that, and Hiram, correct me, but a lot of that is providing connections. It's about getting people connected to these areas. And so I'll just give a shout out to that program as well. That might benefit you also, Penelope. If you're talking about CIOs of larger companies, which most people are, remember that those are companies that have very structured procurement processes. And so starting with the CIO is not always the best. Sometimes they're the ultimate decision makers. Sometimes they're people within their staff that are making different decisions that don't even make it up to that. About some of the large Fortune 1000 companies. So there's a couple things. One, look at the procurement processes that are going on. There are often procurement processes where they carve out opportunities for minority-led businesses, women and minority-led businesses. Sometimes it's connected with HR, sometimes it's not, but definitely in that procurement process and that supply chain. Others, there is a women and minority supplier network in Georgia. We can get you that information as well. It does precisely what you're saying. They help connect companies with the procurement processes of different processes. And I know, one of the people that's very involved in our diversity, equity, and inclusion runs it for Truist Bank. There are other companies that have these processes, and their whole thing is to help companies like yours to succeed and be, and get acquainted with and then successful throughout these procurement processes.
Yeah, and there are other, there are associations and other really strong associations and organizations in Metro Atlanta, and I just think immediately of women in technology, as one path. But there are a number that also work to help with introductions and networking and support. So those are things to consider as well.
Yeah.
We've got a couple more minutes here to see if we've got any other questions from the audience. Again, this has been recorded and we will send this information out, and I'll work with the Max team to do so. I don't see anything at this point. Larry and Hiram, I want to thank you very much on behalf of Max, our provider council and leadership, and everyone in the workforce and economic development areas within Metro Atlanta and Georgia. Thank you for your time today. I think it's been very insightful, and as you've both said, now has never been a better time. This is the time.
This is the time.
This is the time. And I just love the inclusion drives innovation. I mean,
thank you so much, Hiram. Always a pleasure to spend time with you.
Yes.
Heather, thank you for all your hard work and making sure that this happens.
thank you,
Thanks
Heather.
to everybody who joined us.
Thank you very much. And thanks to our,
Thank you.
again, to our Max anchors. We appreciate everyone's time, and I hope you all have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care, everybody.
Thanks, Ray. Bye-bye.